Hey Love Tribers, peace. Today I am very excited to share with you how I make high vibe, raw, vegan cinnamon rolls. So this is a really fun recipe, tastes great, and I love it because I get to use the almond nut milk pulp that's left over when I make almond milk. So if you've ever watched my video for almond milk, I talk about saving the almond nut milk pulp, and that's what I'm using in this recipe. The almond nut milk pulp is great for making raw vegan breads and these cinnamon rolls. And I love feeling like I'm using all the ingredients. So I recently made some almond nut milk, and what I did was I just put the nut milk pulp in a glass bowl, and I sealed it. I just have kept it in the refrigerator for several days. So I try to make it as soon as possible, but it's actually been several days and it's still fine. So we're going to be using that. So I'm going to start with the filling. And what I have in this bowl are some walnuts that I've just chopped coarsely. And I actually did soak the walnuts. You do not have to soak the nuts. I like to soak the nuts. I soaked them for 2 hours, and then I popped them in the dehydrator overnight. So they had been in the dehydrator. They're nice and dehydrated. If you don't have time for that, just chop up some walnuts coarsely chopped. And I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a quarter of a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then a quarter of a teaspoon of the pink Himalaya salt, and it's a fine ground salt. And then I'm just going to kind of mix that just a little bit while it's still dry to get those evenly distributed. And then I've got an 8-ounce jar of maple syrup. Now, I always encourage you to find grade B, and for some reason I cannot find grade B maple syrup, so I had to go with the grade A, but it is non-GMO and it is organic, and you're only going to use about half of a cup, so I won't be using this entire jar. So I'm just going to slowly add the maple syrup, and I'm just going to, again, mix this up. This is going to be the filling for the cinnamon rolls, and if I have any extra left over, I usually top the cinnamon rolls with that. Okay. All right, so that's that. And I'm just getting that mixed up really well. And I can tell I put in a little bit too much, but it's not going to be a big deal. But yeah, you just want to use about a half of a cup of your maple syrup. And you know, you can always use agave nectar if you prefer. I just try to sweeten as many of my recipes that I can with either maple syrup or dates, just because they've got so many health benefits in them. The maple syrup has lots of the B vitamins, and the dates are just chock full of goodness. Okay, so I'm going to just set that to the side for now and make the cinnamon roll. So for the cinnamon roll ingredients, I've got 5 Cuisinart dates, and I've already put them in my Cuisinart, and I've started to chop them already. So I just kind of pulse chop them because I want to get those chopped pretty fine. So I've already begun chopping them, and you know, again, with the dates, you want to always make sure to remove the seeds, and oftentimes they have this little what they call a hack, and you want to get those off because they can ruin the recipe. And so just kind of feel around and make sure you got the seed and that little hard top off of your Majel date. Not all dates have that little hard top, but you want to look for it because sometimes it gets stuck inside. So, and these were nice and wet dates. So it's nice if your dates are dry, you might need to add a little bit of maple syrup to sort of wet the recipe, or again, maybe some agave nectar. But if you can, look for some nice, juicy dates. And then I've also got about a half of a cup of ground flax seeds. So what I do is I grind my flax seeds. I buy the flax seeds fresh so that I can grind it myself. That way I'm always using the freshest ingredients. So I get my flax seeds and I put about a cup in the Vitamix blender or high-speed blender, and just about a cup. If you put more than that, it's hard to get it to grind evenly. So I usually just do about a cup at a time, and that fills up about a 16-ounce jar once you grind the flaxseed into a meal. So anyway, I've got some flaxseed meal. I store it in the refrigerator to keep it fresh, and this is about half of a cup. And I'm going to start with most of it. I haven't put all of it, so I'm at about a third of a cup left there, or actually maybe more like a fourth of a cup. And then I'm going to just mix that a little bit. So I just use the pulse, and just kind of pulse it. So I use the flax meal first because it's nice and dry. And I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the flaxseed. So I'm using the entire half of a cup of the flaxseed meal. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the pink Himalaya salt. Let's see how much of that. I use about a teaspoon. I use a teaspoon of the Himalaya salt. So I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle that in. And then I'm going to use a teaspoon of the ground cinnamon. Go ahead and add that. And again, I'm going to go ahead and pulse that a little bit. Again, just to get all that evenly distributed before I start to add the almond nut milk pulp. Okay, and then I'm going to add, about a quarter of a teaspoon of the vanilla extract. And that was just a little bit more, but I love vanilla, so that's fine. Okay, and the only two ingredients that I have left is I've got 2.5 cups of the nut milk pulp here. And again, it's still moist. I didn't dehydrate it. And then I've got about a cup of almond milk. I probably won't use all the almond milk, so I'm only going to add this at last. So once more, I'm going to pulse this. And again, I just want to get all of those flavors evenly distributed. And then I've got this great mixture. And now I'm just going to start to add the nut milk pulp. And again, I'll start with most of it, maybe about half of it. And again, I just use the pulse. Add just a little bit more. Okay, so it's working great. It's evenly distributed. I'm just going to take my spatula and kind of scrape down the sides where I've got a little bit of dates still on the sides, but it's not much, which is nice. Now go ahead and add a teeny bit more. So far I've got about 2 1/4 cups of the nut milk pulp, and that looks like about all I'm going to need. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour in just a little bit. I don't want to put in too much at a time. I don't want this to get too runny. However, again, with the raw vegan food preparation, you can always fix it. So if I were to add too much, I can always add a little more of the flaxseed meal, or I can add a little bit more of the nut milk pulp. But I'm going to just add a little bit at a time, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and then I'm going to just pour the almond nut milk in as it's running. So you're looking for about the consistency of bread dough. So you don't want it too thick, but you don't want it too runny. So play with it, start to feel it, and look for that consistency. This is going to become the dough, and we're going to roll it out. And then we're going to add the filling. So this is still a little bit thick, so I'm just going to turn it on again and add a little bit more of the milk. So I've already used about half of the milk. I also kind of like to give it a taste. It's really good. I just like it a little bit sweet, but not too sweet, because the filling is going to be so sweet. And especially this filling, since I put a little bit more of the maple syrup than I had intended. I might end up using the whole cup of milk. So again, I'm going to add a little bit more. Okay, so I used the entire cup of almond milk, and that worked out great. And then I only used about 2 1/4 of a cup of the nut milk pulp. So you could always, if I weren't trying to do a video, I might go ahead and use the rest of this and add a little bit more milk. But I want to give you some concrete ingredients. So, as a matter of fact, a lot of times we post some things that I made, and people would want the recipe, and because I kind of do it as I go, I wouldn't always know how much of everything I use, because I taste it as I go, and I start to add a little bit more of this and that just to get the flavor right. And that's why I love this making the raw vegan stuff, is you really can always, just as you go, flavor it so that it's just as you want it. All right, so next I'm going to roll this out onto one of my sheets for the dehydrator. So the dehydrators come with the no-stick little sheet, and I'm going to roll it out on that. So I'm just going to take the blade out. I don't want to waste any of the ingredients, so I'm going to wipe some of this off the blade. actually forgotten I was going to use my rolling pin, and I had to get that out. I've just rinsed it off. Okay, so I'm just going to roll this out, and you don't want to press too hard when you're rolling it, and I'm going to roll it till it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. And again, when you're making these, you can just make this however you want. This is just kind of what I have found works pretty consistently every time. And this would be a great sweetbread without the filling. It's not too sweet. And while I'm kind of getting this out, I like it to be just right. So I take my time with it. And again, you don't want to press it too hard because it'll stick to your rolling pin. But these are great. These are going to go in the dehydrator. And what I like to do is just sort of plan it so that they are ready, they're ready right when I want them. So they're great right out of the dehydrator. So if you're planning on serving them in the morning, you might make them in the evening and put them in the dehydrator so that they can be in the dehydrator overnight. And you can play around with your temperatures. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put them in the dehydrator for the first hour at 145 degrees. And so you can do that with the raw vegan cooking because it's not going to get all the way up to 145 degrees in that hour. It doesn't get nearly hot at all. And so I start off just to get it going. It speeds it up. And then I'll probably turn it down to about 104. So it's early in the day here, and I'll leave it overnight. But the thing too about all this is you can eat them at any time. But you'll just take them out while they're just soft and still kind of moist. All right, so I've got my roll ready to go. And what I've done is I've already started to lift up one of the ends. Okay. So I've just spread that out onto the sheet. And now I'm going to add the filling. So what I'm going to do is just spread the filling on. And since I put a little bit more maple syrup in there that I wanted, I'm going to let it sort of drain. And, I always say, I just get my hands in there, just put all your love straight into your food, all your good vibes, all your gratitude, and, people can taste that. You're going to eat this, people you love are going to eat this, so put all that good energy in there, and then just roll it up, and this is just where you're just going to start to roll up your cinnamon roll dough. You're going to make it into kind of a roll. And that's why you don't want to make it too thin. Make sure, go thick with it, because if it's too thin, it's really hard to roll. And I may have rolled this out a little bit too thin this time. And then I get it rolled up, and then I come over to the other side, and I start to just sort of close it off on the other side. Okay, so I have this log, sort of this cinnamon roll log. And I'm just going to kind of go through, and you know, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is going to taste great. You don't have to worry about it being all perfect. Really, you do not. So let me wash off my hands. And I'm just going to slice mine right on the sheet. You could always, I was planning to put it on the cutting board. Maybe I'll just put it on the cutting board just so that I don't. So yeah, I'll just roll this onto my cutting board. But be careful doing that. I lost a little piece. I'm going to pat that on there. Wow, this is going to be good. This is looking great. And I'm probably going to put it on a lined dehydrator sheet. So I wasn't sure. So if you're familiar, the dehydrator trays have a little hole. And I'm not sure until I cut it if I need to line it or not. But I think I'm just going to go ahead with the lined sheet. So I am going to line it with the little sticky sheet, or the no-stick sheet. And then I'm just going to slice them. And you can slice this any size that you like. And you get your little rolls. You can see. So precious. So, and they'll all be a little bit different. You know, I like them to be more on the bready end, and then some people like them with a little more of the filling. So the ones on the end usually tend to have a little more of the bready. Again, just slice whatever thickness that you like. And you're going to pop them onto the dehydrator sheet. Of course, the smaller you make them, the more quickly they'll be ready. But again, you can start eating these pretty much any time. Like, you can eat these right now. But it's worth waiting. It is worth the wait.